Thanks everyone for joining me. I'm back with another episode for the Travel Collective, and I'm always had a big love for the United States. I think we have so many amazing places to explore and discover. So I'm excited to connect with Amy today and hear more about Michigan. I know many of you know I love Michigan in the autumn. The Upper Peninsula is a fabulous place, but there's Michigan's a big state. There's a lot more to Michigan than just fall colors in the Upper Peninsula. So, welcome, Amy.
Thanks for having me, April.
Yeah, so lately I like to ask this question first because it's kind of been on my mind. It's the whole idea of wanderlust and travel, and are we born with that? Is it something we discover later? Because I kind of know I had I kind of came into travel as a kid. I remember always getting excited about
Sure.
exploring places, but then my sister, it's kind of like, yeah, whatever. She doesn't have that same, I think, interest in it. So talk to me a little bit about your how you view wanderlust, Amy.
I kind of feel that it's almost born into you. It's in your DNA. Um, my parents' idea of international travel was to load five kids in a Delta 88 Oldsmobile and drive to Canada. And we drove every province that bordered the United States. Being in Michigan, Canada was close. And we went everywhere from Nova Scotia to British Columbia, all of those provinces. And so then as children, we would look at the map and say, just it's a little farther, just go over that line so we can say we've been there.
Oh, I love that. That is great. And I love that when you mentioned paper maps because I love paper maps to this day, and I always encourage people to use paper maps still when they're trying to plan their travels.
Well, I think that's an important thing to mention about Michigan, especially in the Upper Peninsula. If you're um, using GPS, you might end up in the middle of the lake if you follow what they're saying. Also, your GPS might go out because you might not have a signal in Michigan's Upper Peninsula or some of the more um, remote areas of Michigan, and you don't really think about that, but it certainly happens.
Oh yeah, it's definitely true. It happens. And I don't think everyone thinks about it when they're thinking about planning travel.
No.
So you've got a new book coming out called Secret Michigan.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to share a tidbit from that or some favorite places of yours in Michigan. There's so much to Michigan that I haven't explored. So,
I like to tell people about it's called Secret Michigan, a guide to the weird, wonderful, and obscure. And so I'll share one of my favorite things. It could be something that you've never heard of, um, or it could be something that you know, but you don't know the backstory, and you go, oh, and you're puzzled. And so there are 84 features in the book, and so there are 84 different places to go within Michigan. And it starts out with a header like Hail to the Chief. And then it has a question: who is the only president that was also a king? So it's kind of a puzzler. And then there's 200 to 300 words that talk about the answer to that question. And it's kind of funny, that particular one I've asked, um, I don't know, probably almost 100 people in my other book events, um, if they could answer that, and they can't.
I was going to
And
say, I don't think I could answer that one.
well, I'll give you the answer in just a second because it's a fun one. Um, Not political at all, but just interesting. And then there's a pull quote that talks about a fact that is about that, but really not part of that story. And then there's a box that tells you where it is, what you should go see, how much it costs, and any pro tips around it. And
Oh, I
so,
love that.
so getting back to it, most of us know that Gerald R. Ford was the only president from Michigan, the only president who was never elected president or vice president, and the only president who has his presidential library and his museum in different cities, Ann Arbor versus Grand Rapids. But they don't know that his name wasn't always Gerald R. Ford. Um, he was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and his mother and father divorced when he was just a few weeks old, and his mother brought him to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and with to live with her and her parents. And when he was about 3, she met a man, married him, and that man's name was Gerald R. Ford, and they began calling him Gerald R. Ford Jr., but his birth name was Leslie King. And so, and so his stepfather never adopted him. And when his grandparents, his paternal grandparents, passed away, and he was either he had graduated Harvard Law or excuse me, Yale Law, or he was in Yale Law, he legally changed his name to Gerald R. Ford Jr.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a
So
great story.
so if you're into um, history, this is a good one
Yeah,
to
that
to
is a good one.
a good book to check out. So, but it could obscure things like I talk about shipwrecks and crosses under the Great Lakes, and I talk about obscure birds that were endangered species and have made a comeback. Um, Weird things like there is an Anatomy of Death museum, um, and a paranormal museum, and then there's some things that are a nod to Michigan's car culture, like we have the only state highway that doesn't allow motorized vehicles. We have the world's largest wheel, and we have the a ship that is officially designated continuation of a highway.
Oh,
So lots of interesting things in Michigan.
yeah, exactly. And I think Michigan is a great place for travelers because it kind of has different personalities depending on the season.
It
Um,
does.
with spring coming up, I think there's a couple places that really put out for spring. Isn't it Holland, Michigan that really?
Yes, if you love flowers, Holland, Michigan is a great place. They have what they call tulip time, which was is the festival, and it lasts over 2 weekends in the week between. And we also have the Lilac Festival in June on Mackinac Island that people don't
Oh,
realize.
oh wow,
So
that sounds beautiful.
yeah, and it's very the aromas and scents are just wonderful. So um, those are a couple of things in Michigan that you should check out. And it's just in Holland particularly, it's interesting with such a Dutch heritage. They have museums, several museums about that. They have um, they no longer allow you to export windmills from Holland to the United States, but Holland, Michigan has one that actually still grinds flour.
Oh wow. Oh, that's neat. Yeah, that is
So you can
interesting.
actually go there and buy some flour and then go take it home and make bread or muffins.
That's cool. So for travelers that are thinking about going to Michigan, because it is such a kind of a big, kind of spread out state,
It is.
and like the Upper Peninsula is not easily reached by, you have to connect flights or drive or whatever. Do you have tips for people trying to plan a trip to, like how long, if they should split it up, anything around that?
Well, I think you kind of need to be really focused on what you want to do. Um, from the lower peninsula all the way up, like let's say you flew into Detroit or probably Detroit or Grand Rapids, um, you really need to figure out, am I going to focus on the Upper Peninsula? Am I going to focus on a particular theme like automobile heritage, that kind of thing, and plan it that way? Um, it, Going across the Mackinac Bridge, um, there's you can stay somewhere like Indian River, which is about 30 miles from the bridge, and that makes a good jumping off point centrally. And the hotel rooms are much less expensive there because they're locally owned, and there are some lovely hotel rooms there. Or I should say, really, they're motels. But still, um, that is central to that area. And so then you can go to Traverse City, you can go across the bridge into Mackinac City and that kind of thing. Another thing is Lansing, which is my hometown, is within 90 miles of 90% of the population of Michigan.
Oh,
So
wow.
that makes a great place to stay and then do day trips. You can do a day trip to Holland or Grand Rapids. You can then do a day trip over to Detroit. Um,
Yeah, that's a
but
good tip. Yeah, having a base and then making the day trips out from that spot.
yeah, that that is if you want to do the Lower Peninsula and do some of the bigger city things, that is wonderful. We have the state capitol, and that's beautiful in and of itself and quite unusual. Lansing is the only state capital that is not also the county seat.
Oh,
So our county seat is Mason, but for Ingham County, but the capital is in Lansing. So there's a lot of great history there. And if you go somewhere like Marshall, Michigan, um, that they were once thinking they were going to be the capital and actually built the governor's house there. And
oh,
so that historic home is there. Um, but now they're known for this magic museum,
oh, interesting.
and that's in my book. So, and also in that area, to magic, there's a cemetery where 40, I don't know the exact number, but there are a lot of magicians that are buried there, like Henry Blackstone. And
Oh, wow.
so, and if you go in the summer, they have each of the graves that are magicians marked with like a magic wand and a card and a top hat
Oh,
kind of.
interesting. Yeah, that's unique.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
wonder why they all chose to be buried, like you said, in the same cemetery. Like, that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So, um, but other tips, one thing I like to mention that it's really strange to me that people would think this, but if you're not from Michigan, okay. But I like to point out to people that if you're going to Mackinac Island, it's not the Mackinac Bridge that takes you there. The Mackinac Bridge goes between the Upper and Lower Peninsula, and either you need to fly or take a ferry to get to Mackinac Island.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and it is true. You're right. Because I've always taken the ferry to get to the islands. You're right.
Yeah.
There is no bridge.
But
Because
a
you're
lot of people have said something to me about that from out of state. And I'm like, no.
well,
So,
yeah, that's interesting, huh? I know what we all have ideas of what we think of as a state, or just like I think it's lighthouses, and if I'm not mistaken, I might be that is it Lake Superior or Michigan in itself that has the most, it has more lighthouses, I think, than the coast of Maine, I believe.
Michigan has, I think the number is 116, uh, about. lighthouses, and it's the most lighthouses of any state in the United States.
Right. And I always see, I
Yeah.
think that's interesting because a lot of people think it's Maine. They just associate
Yeah.
Maine and lighthouses, and they don't realize that Michigan actually, with the lakes there, has more. So I
Well,
think,
and we have the largest freshwater coastline in the United States.
yeah, that's amazing. So talk to
So,
me a little bit about food. I think as travelers, we always like finding things that are kind of regional and unique to a particular state or area. What would you say if you're coming to Michigan would
oh, this
be,
is one of my
yes,
favorite
okay.
topics. I'm in Gulf Shores right now and eating shrimps.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Okay, so pasties are one of the big things, and pasties are handheld meat pies. Although, if you choose to eat them with gravy, then you eat them with a knife and fork. But it goes back to Cornwall and the miners using those to carry them down into the mines in England. And then in Michigan and our Upper Peninsula, which is where they're most readily known. Um, they use them in the uh, different mines that they have, the copper mines and the iron mines in the Upper Peninsula. So that's one thing. And then cherries. We briefly touched on Traverse City, but that's one of my favorite destinations. I could talk about Traverse City all day. They have the National Cherry Festival in July.
Oh, nice.
So it's the first weekend in July, and I don't know exactly which days in between around that. Um, but cherries are popular, and now they've actually over the years, as cherries became less profitable, some people tore out their cherry orchards and planted grapes.
Oh,
And so that area sits on the same parallel, 45th, 47th parallel as Lombard, Italy, and Bordeaux, France. So the wine there on that parallel is wonderful, and they have very successful wineries there. And there's a couple of those in my book that have interesting backstories. Um, at Bry's Estate Winery, there's is in my book. They have a secret garden,
oh,
so
wow. That's
I
cool.
had that. Um, and then Chateau Chantal has an interesting story behind their winery. And so just there are so many wineries in that area. You could just go there and do wine tastings.
Oh my gosh, wow. Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah,
have thought
like
that.
40, 50. And well, and as long as we're talking about alcohol,
Yeah.
Um, I'll mention Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids has been voted Beer City USA for over 10 years.
Oh,
I think
really?
this is the 11th year. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so there are, I don't know the exact number, but around 70 breweries in that area, which is really near Holland. So some of those breweries um, are in that area too. So um, if you're a person who likes beer, that's a good place to go and try craft beer.
Yeah. I always knew about the cherries, the berries. I'm a berry person, like the jams and the fresh pies, the cherry pies and stuff like that. So,
Well, and blueberries are
oh,
very
that's right.
very popular around Grand Haven and that West Coast area. So there's just, and I would be negligent, and people will be upset with me if I don't mention the East Coast of Michigan,
Oh, okay.
because a lot of people talk about the West Coast, and I think it's because the West Coast is easier to get to in a way. I mean, you
Right.
can fly into Grand Rapids and head off up and down the West Coast. Whereas um, getting to the East Coast, like Alpena and
Yeah.
Shipwreck Alley, I mean, it's off the highway about 30-35 miles on a two-lane highway. And so it's a little bit harder to get to. So I think they don't get their fair share of mentions, but there are some wonderful lighthouses along there. And I have some different stories in my book about that.
No, that's great. That's good. So, are there places that you would, I know you love Traverse City. Are there places you'd recommend for solo travelers? Because I know there's this growing demand for solo travelers that I keep hearing about, but
Well, it always depends on what their interests are. Um, I feel like it's relatively safe. So,
yeah.
I don't, I mean, um, so I don't think that there's a concern there. It really depends. If you're a hiker, the Upper Peninsula and Porcupine
Oh,
um,
yeah.
Mountain Wilderness State Park is beautiful for those people who like to get out and hike and camp. They have the Lake of the Clouds, which has in the fall is stunning with color. And so that's and it's remote
Yeah,
there.
it is remote there, but it's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
quiet. So, as long as you're comfortable with, yeah, being
Yeah.
outdoorsy and kind of quiet like that, definitely.
But if you're a camper, that's the place. And there's a lot of out um I'm not even remembering what to call it, but camping that's off the grid and off, um but solo travelers, it really depends on what you like. If you're into museums, Grand Rapids, Lansing, and Detroit have wonderful museums. But I also love the small towns, just discovering some of those towns that you might not expect. I love well, I already mentioned Indian River, but that's another great place.
Yeah, I'm
um
like you. I like the small towns. I like, just the local businesses that you're going to encounter and just checking those out. Don't be afraid to check out those businesses that may look a little run down on the outside, but inside they've got great food and just really,
yeah, I would say if you're a solo traveler, Indian River would be a good place, or Traverse City. Both places I'm very comfortable with. Um, and Indian River has a lot of outdoor experiences with the inland waterway, and they have a place called Big Bear Adventures that does ATV rides and will take you down the river on a
oh, wow.
on a rafting tour. It's not whitewater rafting
Right.
by any stretch, but it's just beautiful.
Yeah, nice. So, are there festivals that you would suggest? Because I think Michigan has a lot of different festivals that you might not want to miss.
Yeah. Well, we touched on the Tulip Festival, the Lilac Festival, the Cherry Festival. There's also a Blueberry Festival in um I want to say Grand Haven or South Haven, um on the West Coast. There's also a film festival.
Oh,
um
interesting.
I'm trying to remember. I want to say it's Saugatuck, but I could be wrong. The this Saugatuck has a lot of galleries, so that
Oh,
into
interesting.
if you're into art and that kind of thing, that town is very, very nice to go and spend a weekend, or it's you could be a week there and just kind of relax. Um, Trying to think what other festivals we have hundreds
Oh,
of
I'm
them.
sure you have
Oh,
hundreds.
well, in Traverse City itself, they have a festival almost every weekend.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And in my town of Lansing, we have a beer festival. Oh, here's something. We were talking about food. Um, we started an olive burger festival
Olive burgers. Oh, that's interesting.
because Lansing, it's been said that we perhaps invented the olive burger.
Yeah, that's not
And the
something I've
olive
heard of.
burger,
I haven't heard of that.
that was kind of, we got off on the cherries, but olive burgers are simply hamburgers, and then they have either green or black olives made into a sauce with mayonnaise and topped on top of the
Right?
burger.
Oh, interesting.
And there are lots of places that have these olive burgers, and so they started a festival around it.
Well, why not? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. Fudge is another food. I'm kind of going back to one of your previous questions, but Mackinac Island
Oh gosh, yeah.
has a lot of fudge. So Michigan is known for fudge. And you might say, why is that? Well, Michigan has the most diversity in agricultural products, second only to California. So we're second in
Really?
the nation for agricultural products. And so one of those products is sugar beets. And so
No,
then
that
came
makes sense.
fudge.
But yeah, every time I've been to Mackinac Island, it's always like there's so many fudge shops. I'm like, how can they all manage to survive here? I guess everyone leaves with a box of fudge. I don't know.
Usually several
Yeah.
boxes. Um, so those are some of the food things. And then, um, if while you're in Michigan, you have to try Verner's ginger ale. It's
Ooh.
kind of a um, something that the ginger, as you're growing up in Michigan, your parents give that to you for medicinal purposes. The ginger ale, you have an upset stomach. Oh, here, have some ginger ale. Um, so
No, I like that. That is great. So tell me about winter. How is winter in Michigan?
Oh, well, I'm in Gulf Shores right now.
Okay.
I'm not a big outdoor winter person, although I will say that Michigan winters have gotten milder over the years. And so that's helped. But in the Upper Peninsula, snow is not measured in inches, it's measured in feet. Um, so there's tons of outdoor sports that you can do in winter. That rafting tour that I was telling you about, since the water's moving, usually you can take a winter rafting
Oh,
tour.
wow.
Um, let's see, there's snowmobiling is very popular. And in the Upper Peninsula, people will drive their snowmobile from their home to the restaurant. um, let's see, ice fishing is something that people do. And then this is kind of strange that even as someone who lives in Michigan, I hadn't really thought that much about. When you talk about skiing, you
Mm.
think of Colorado and um, various places, but Michigan has, I can't remember where we're ranked exactly, but I think we're in the top 5 of ski resorts, or ski something about skiing.
Oh, wow.
And we have one of the only, um, we have a place called Mount Bohemian in near the Keweenaw Peninsula that is especially designed for expert skiers. Like there are no bunny hills.
Yeah,
It,
right.
it's like black diamond level skiing. And so that's in the Keweenaw Peninsula area, Mount Bohemian. And
Is that
So
near where there's still that big ski jump thing that I guess Olympic skiers had been training on? I might be closed now, but
I think that's it too.
yeah, because you can see it from the road when you're driving past that area, this massive ski jump thing. And I'm like, there's no way you'd get me up there.
And there's like Boyne Mountain, Boyne Highland, those areas are beautiful. And now they have a brand new suspension bridge at Boyne that's a pedestrian type bridge, and you can walk out over this um, uh, cavern, or I don't know how to describe it, but it's full of trees. So again, that's another good place to go in the fall and see fall
Oh,
colors.
yeah, that sounds
Um,
beautiful.
and then kind of near there, Harbor Springs is the Tunnel of Trees, and that's about a 20-mile drive or road trip that you can take, and the trees have literally grown over and meet at the top in like an arch.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's like 20 miles, 18 miles of trees that are like a tunnel.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds incredible. Well, wow, there's just so much to explore in Michigan. So tell everyone
Yeah.
where they can, if you have a website or where they can pick up your book when it's ready. I think it's coming out, you said in April?
April 1st, it'll be out. So I have a blog, Follow the Piper, Amy Piper, Follow the Piper. And so you can check out a lot of Michigan and Midwest. I'm putting up more and more Michigan content for my book and getting everything updated and ready to go for that. For my book, you can order it from readypress.com. It's on pre-order right now, or amazon.com.
Oh, nice.
Any of the any place you will, bookstores, but Amazon and Reedy Press are the primary places that you can get them. You can find out more about it on my blog, and then um
Yeah,
I'll
and
be
check out your blog. I bet you have lots of tips for travelers too.
Yes, I do. And I focus a lot around food. So if you're looking for a good place to eat, or if you're trying to figure out how to choose the best place for you while you're on vacation for a restaurant, I have a download when you sign up for my email list that will help you figure out how to choose the best restaurant. Some tips around that.
Oh, that's great, Amy. Well, thank you so much. I've so enjoyed hearing about Michigan and oh, there's so many places. I wish I could get up there for the Tulip Festival for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that it's the beginning of May, so come on.
Yep. So thanks for tuning in, everyone, and check out Amy's book that's coming out, Secret Michigan, and follow the Piper for more. Thank you.